Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. In celebration of Portrait of a Lady on Fire's release to the masses on Hulu, we are doing an analysis, an in-depth look at the movie, which we have both now seen 2 times.
It's a movie that really stays with you, and it's one that you can ponder over and think about. It is just rich with themes. I mean, there are so many weird liberal arts classes that you could come up with where this film would be at the center of your topic of discussion.
And this is going to be a spoiler discussion. Let's just explore some of those topics. I think the main theme of the film is the power of two, our ability to enrich others by seeing them, and the power we reap in being seen, and how something powerful and new can be created when a couple has this relationship where they're seeing each other. Marianne's paintings don't really work when she's just drawing a portrait of what Eloise looks like. And we can see in the film, when we first see that painting, her first draft of the painting, or the second draft, it looks like Eloise, but it doesn't feel like Eloise. And so the task then becomes that she must paint something that captures and feels like the subject. And in order to do that, in order for an artist to properly capture their subject, they have to form a relationship with the subject. That involves letting their subject sort of paint them. The film establishes this relationship between the painter and the canvas, where it suggests that we are all in our own ways, both painters and canvases. And there is a quote midway through the movie where Eloise says, referencing their relationship as a painter and someone being painted, that we are in the exact same position. So just because you're painting me doesn't mean that I'm not also painting you, in a way.
I think Marianne's sort of internal transformation in this movie is harder to detect. But I think there's one key scene where she sort of says it, and it's when she's challenged on the notion of there are conventions to how you paint something. This is her defending what the original portrait looks like. She says, I'm painting it with conventions. I'm not just going to paint you according to what I feel. I'm painting you according to the conventions, because I don't necessarily trust those feelings. And in return, Eloise says, some passions are legitimate and deep. And so Marianne is also learning to acknowledge what those things are, and then she brings them into her painting. So little did she know that she, as a person, was being transformed in the act of observing this other person.
I really built my character as a journey between being an object to being a subject. From the beginning of the movie, I know I am looked at. I think it's different for the character of Marianne, who is ignoring the fact that she's being looked at also, So it's more, to me, it's a turning point in a direction that I become really a subject, but Marianne, notice at that point that she's also an object in my eyes,
There's a scene where she is painting her, and she says, are you bored? Are you bored of me painting you? And she says, no, I'm not bored because I'm paying attention to you and how you're painting me. There's this sort of bouncing back and forth that happens, and in that scene, there's also a frame of her as she's sitting and being painted, where Marianne walks into that frame. She enters into her own portrait.
So what she's exploring in her portrait is actually herself. And then there's that quote from the film where she says, do all lovers feel like they're creating something new? I mean, first of all, incredible fucking line.
The dialogue throughout the movie is really fucking good, too.
They are seeing each other for themselves, and they're exploring each other and who they are. But there's another thing they're exploring, and it's what is flourishing from this relationship. There's another line in the movie, it takes two to be funny.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Interacting with somebody else, especially somebody that you have a really deep connection with, creates you learn about yourself, you learn new things, things come out of you that you might have never expected. And it's just true. It rings true to the human experience. When we connect with others, we surprise ourselves, and new things flourish.
It's like the song in Annihilation, they are one, they are three together. Oh, Lady on Fire is Annihilation.
I don't know if it's Annihilation.
I don't know, it's not Annihilation. Anyway, the act of painting goes beyond just physically painting something. And really, what's happening is the act of observing.
Or projecting.
Yeah, or projecting. This would get you into the next theme, the power of being observed.
And it's about the rise of desire. And it's not about discovering somebody, it's about discovering yourself.
The plot sets us up so nicely for this theme to be mined. We have a painter who's trying to explore their subject through observation and not just sitting in front of a canvas and painting. We're getting to know her in the most cinematic of ways by just images, and those images being revealed to us over a period of time and in small amounts. Whether it's like her ear, or it's the back of her head, or it's her hair. On the surface, this is just her physically looking at her and observing her. But she's getting to know who she is, like her soul. She's not just exploring her like visually.
One other sort of idea that's expressed in this movie is the idea that people have more than one portrait of themselves. And there's a lot in this movie of how the couple is choosing to portray themselves to another. For example, when Eloise wants Marianne to look at her when her dress is on fire. Like, that's an image that she wants to give to Marianne. There's a power of being seen in the way that you represent yourself. While the task was to paint one painting, how many paintings do we get in this movie? We get the little like secretly drawn portrait in Eloise's notebook. We have the drawing in the beginning that she ultimately felt like represented this person. There are a lot of different portraits that we get in this movie because once the couple starts to see each other, they realize there are like an infinite amount of portraits. And what is another portrait is of memory. How you remember somebody is yet another portrait. That theme comes back in the end when we watch Eloise go through her own memories.
You know, a more obvious, concrete theme in this movie is the state of women during this time period. It's about the consequences of marrying off, you know, women and then having them sort of be property of men. The entire situation that Eloise is in, where she's in this sort of isolated mansion, is because her mother married a man who lived here, and now she just exists here. You can see like the consequences for these women is that they're sort of alone. All the women in this movie in some way are alone or isolated, and they deal with it in different ways. Eloise is hoping to escape to Milan, as her best bet is sort of to get to Milan, have some other things that she could possibly explore, but like, again, she's still tied down. She's just at least not totally alone. And for Marianne, she decides she doesn't even need another person in her life. And she was obviously not even planning on getting attached to anybody for that reason. When a woman is married off, they're sort of put into an exile. I mean, they extend this even further with the abortion plot. This film suggests that having a less than optimally timed pregnancy can put you into that prison, like that exile from, you know, the world. And it limits you to your passions, etc. Tying this like women in exile theme back to the portraits, originally, what is Marianne commissioned to do? She's commissioned to make an image for a man, and this is so destructive. This is the reason that, like, you know, internally these people are like sort of kept in prisons, because they're resigned to whatever image their husband sees them as, which is what society expects of them. The mother in the film mentions briefly that the portrait above her fireplace, you know, is the portrait that her husband was given before she moved into this house. So she came into the house, saw the portrait, and sort of like recognized what her role was. It was already like there for her. The portrait gave her a sense of identity, but it wasn't who she was, it was who she was expected to be. That character was actually really important, especially the second time around. That character like grew on me, and their significance in the story and their background. And Celina Sciamma could have easily made this character a staunch traditionalist, and she didn't do that. You know, she had the same understanding of the limitations that society poses on women. She wasn't just hoping for her to get married. She wanted to give her that life that she had in Milan, where she felt a sense of freedom. They have this character just as much as the other ones in position in society, where they have to make sacrifices between their passions and what they're actually allowed to do. One theme here is the female gaze. I cannot speak from personal experience because I am a man. I cannot change that for the purpose of this analysis, so I give it my best shot. The male gaze is a concept in movies where, you know, you have male cinematographers and directors, and the images of women we see in movies They're the way that men see women. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, in the fact that it has a woman director and cinematographer, but also just with like what the movie is about. The gaze obviously in general means something in this movie, but it's all female gazes, and the female gaze is empowerment. Whenever, one female is looking at another, they're empowering and enriching each other. Like there is, something flourishing there. It's a very deliberate choice that the romance is between two women, because I don't think in this world a man and a woman could develop the same connection. There's something special about that. There's something special in the way that they can understand each other and enrich each other because of the expectations that men would have brought, to their portraits of them. The man could not have painted an accurate portrait. The male gaze wouldn't have been sufficient.
Well, they tried it. The men tried to paint her and they couldn't do it. In this society, women are in some ways like sort of stuck or trapped. Even if a man in this society were to understand that, it's not the same as being understood by another person who is also, stuck or trapped.
It's like the first portrait that Marianne did is the portrait stuck in this male gaze. And this new portrait that she finds with this collaboration, this love story, this sorority moment in this movie, she finds a portrait that looks like more than Eloise and look like more herself as an artist, as a woman.
I think one motif in this film that really is important and, lends to a better understanding of this theme in relationships is the theme of art. And obviously the movie is literally about a painter painting something, but we also see the characters being influenced by literature and music. And the relationship with an individual to a work of art is in this movie represented as something very similar to the relationship that you have with another person. If you connect to a piece of art, you are connecting to the artist.
I mean, one giant point that I haven't even really made, but is obvious in the film, is that when they're exploring art, that's just a means to show us that they're actually exploring love and relationships. When she's drawing her, when she's observing her, that's her falling in love. When she's playing a song for her, like, those people are falling in love. And obviously in the ending, the role that music plays, like, it's their love theme in a way. The whole entire act of painting is how Celina Sciamma is showing them falling in love.
This movie's a fascinating statement on, the role of art in our lives. The relationship between you and a work of art is that the work of art needs to see you in order for you to be like affected by it. And then you experiencing the art, you're projecting yourself onto the art and then you make something new out of that. So it's like this relationship between
it's something
you
that's
and
your own too. It's like saying like how personal art is. It's
yeah,
not
exactly.
just about like conventions and representing things in a very straightforward way. It's about what it means to you. Like the art obviously doesn't speak to you, but there's a relationship of like projection that's going on. And I'm projecting onto the art my own experience, and the art is giving me back something.
The artist has to see you in order for you to feel like you're being seen by the work of art. And in being seen by the work of art, you create an interpretation or a connection with it. It goes without saying that this film has that effect on you while you're watching it. It's the meta angle of this film. This is the kind of movie that you watch and you have that relationship with it. So when you're watching this movie, you can almost reflect on your own experience watching the movie and interpreting the movie. And of Celina Sciamma, like honing into the human experience and of relationships.
The movie is all about the power of the gaze. I mean, you look at the film, but the film is also looking at you. I hope that you feel looked at by the film. And in the end, I want you to leave the room thinking about yourself and also your love for cinema, because that's what this final scene is all about.
There's a definite meta angle, which I think is very intentional. The movie is about somebody who is observing someone else. And we, watching a movie, what are we doing? We are looking at a canvas ourselves. So a lot of these point of view shots that you get in the film, we're put into the painter's eyes, but we're also like people sitting in a theater watching a screen, which is a canvas in itself.
And we're the painters.
Yeah, so we're the painters in a way because of what we are projecting, the experience that we're projecting onto this. Like, I was thinking to myself, like, are we falling in love in this movie as well? Like, is the feelings that we experience watching these two people falling in love, like, is that love? Like, are we having the same experience as the characters if we're enjoying and invested in the movie? So this is like where you can put this film in like a film class and have a whole discussion on like, when you have this discussion, so what does film mean? Well, what are movies? Like, movies are observing and they are projecting. Like, there's this relationship we have with them.
The theme of art like hits so hard in the end of this movie, because obviously earlier we're introduced to like, oh, Eloise has never heard an orchestra. And then she hears an orchestra, and Marianne watches her experience the orchestra,
and it's the song she played on piano, obviously.
It is?
Oh my god. Yeah, she was playing Winter on the piano. She was playing it very slowly. She was like, bam, 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 on the piano. Probably
it sounded like a totally different song to me.
Yeah, no, it does, because it's slowed down. She's trying to remember the song and she can't do it because she's not able to articulate the experience of listening to the music, which is the same thing as love. You can't articulate it, you have to experience it. What art allows us to do is experience, it's tying into the theme.
Yeah.
But so what this song allows her to do is experience all these emotions that she felt.
We obviously know that hearing the orchestra for the first time, hearing the same song, both those things are causing her to like flip through memories in her mind. So her projection onto the music is very singular, because nobody else is going to listen to that music and think about
Is
Marianne.
the person next to her crying and going through all these emotions? Like, no. The fucking ending of this movie, like, holy shit, it might have like the best ending I can't really remember a film. Arrival, okay? Arrival, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Just one of those some of those movies that just have like amazing endings that you can't really watch it dry-eyed. Let's just say that.
I think the ending draws a lot of similarities to Call Me by Your Name.
I had this discussion.
Like, not only is it a long take of somebody remembering their lover, the visual symbolism in Call Me by Your Name's ending, where like the warmth of the fire is on his face, and yet like the background is all like very coldly lit. Yeah. But like he's enjoying the ability to remember.
What is she looking at in the film in Portrait of a Lady on Fire? She's looking at she's looking into a fire in a way. She's looking, at the fire that was burning in her. The piece represents a storm, so she's experiencing like that as well, which you can sort of like put fire into that mix if you want. It's like literally the same thing in some ways, but this is even more powerful, I thought, because you don't hear music like the entire movie. I mean, literally the entire movie you don't hear music, and then all of a sudden...
Yeah, well, you do hear some music. It's all diegetic, though.
When we feel passionate about something or when we love something, we don't have a choice but to look at it and follow that light. So there's this whole story about...
the story that the three of them read.
Yeah, the story the three of them read.
Where he has to turn at the last second and choose to see her.
Sometimes you might say in life, I'm not going to do this thing because it might hurt me. But this film sort of makes the argument, in the case of like true, like deep love, you can't turn away from that when you have that opportunity. So knowing that this is the last time you'll ever see somebody and turning around and giving that look is like devastating. But if it's true love, you almost can't refuse to look even when it's painful. It's about like sort of walking into the fire, I guess you could say, and walking into that pain, and like how, if it's like really this deep, like true love, and that's just the state of these characters. Like they have to go through it. They have to walk towards it. They really have no other choice. It's just that powerful for them. And even in this case, they give Eloise the role of saying like, turn around, like look. They both make that decision together. We're going to share this image.
Creating yet another image.
Yeah. But the film is just that you can't resist it. You can't pull away. You have to look. And there's also this scene where she goes into the ocean because she says, this is the last day that I'm going to see you. And so I'm going to go in the ocean today. And it might kill me because I don't know if I can swim. Which in a way means like, I don't know if I can bear the burden of having like love. But I'm going to try it because like, that's all, this is my experience. Like I have to fulfill my calling. I have to fulfill whatever passion is calling me. And she goes into the ocean anyway because she just feels like, this is what I have to do. Even if it means holding on to something painful for the rest of your life. And then that's in the end why she goes to the orchestra in a way. Like why is she showing up at the orchestra alone? Because she has to feel like these things. Some people might say like you want to repress those emotions and just get on with your life. But she's showing up at the orchestra. She's choosing to do that so she can feel something. Because that's what matters in the end.
Because the film has shown how when you look, when you are seen, when you're in a relationship, something new like arises in you. So to not look or to forget or to choose not to remember or feel would be to neglect like growing. So I think that it's also an acceptance that, you know, these experiences make us stronger. They define who we are. We should always make that decision to turn around. One thing I'm a little puzzled by is the dress. I don't know if you have like a sort of interpretation of that, but she sees the dress at one other time where she looks down the hall and it's sort of like cross-faded. It's a memory of her.
It's a premonition of the ending, though.
It's a premonition of the ending,
she has
but
the white dress on.
But it's also a like how she views her. She views her as like with this angelic white dress and a glow around her, and then in the end, she's actually looks like that. I don't really know quite what to make of it. I don't know about you would.
I think the white dress represents like the canvas she can be painted on. A wedding dress is white as well, and that's like for somebody else to create something new with you, I guess. And so her being white is like her, you know, in a way like being reset, ready to like be sort of shipped off into a new life and have a new person like project onto her.
Oh, because she's a blank canvas?
Yeah, white is the blank canvas. Yeah. That's sort of like the haunting image of her that she has. Yeah. Is like her going into like the next thing.
The memory of a love and the present of a love actually gets contaminated because she sees these images of a ghost and she's actually haunted by the last image that she will see of her, which also talks about our love stories, because I think we are always obsessed with how things are getting started and how they will end. So eventually we are always haunted by the last image of a love story.
The other thing that, and just in terms of like me and my understanding of the movie, like, I don't know, I'm kind of wondering about the role of projection. You know, they say they're creating something new, but like, if you're projecting in a way, like, you know, it's just you creating something, right?
I think it's both, because it's like obviously.
I know it's supposed to be both. I know it's supposed to be both. It's just interesting, like the idea that, you know, they're representing love as projection. I think that's like definitely true. Falling in love is often, I'm just saying the first part of, you know, love, falling in love is often projection, because you're basically setting up all these expectations for a person, saying like, oh, you can fulfill me in these ways. I can see you as fulfilling me in all the ways that would make me whole. And therefore, like, I feel like I fall in love with you, right? That's kind of how
when we think of it. When we think of it as like painter and the canvas, because the movie suggests that you're both painting each other psychologically. Like, you know,
there's two
people. It is all in your mind. Sure, it's all being filtered through you and being created through you. But I think of course, that it definitely like suggests you know,
can't just make up a person. Like, you have to have, you know, the person be there.
Yeah, and it takes two to be funny. Like. The mother would not have laughed out loud if Marianne wasn't there, even though Marianne
or if she did laugh out loud, it would have been a very sad laugh.
Yeah, and even though Marianne didn't make the joke, like she made the joke to herself, but she wouldn't have made it otherwise. I mean, I think that's the thing about this movie. You can't necessarily think of it in terms of being as simple as projecting, because there is something profound about being able to be in the room with another person and surprising yourself.
Here's where I can see this coming together. You cannot see yourself until someone sees you. Perhaps is a deeper point.
That makes a lot of
sense
to me.
You aren't even anybody until other people are like observing you. So who are you even? Like, what can you even, you know, give or do as like a human being if you're not having somebody to give to?
Yeah, and the desire to be seen is like very strong in this movie.
Yeah.
People want to be seen so that they can know who they are.
And there's also like the danger of being seen in a way. You know, you catch fire and you could possibly drown, as we see.
The elements of water and fire.
The elements.
You know, I think it's just crazy that this movie has so much packed in and such a minimalist landscape, like minimal characters and settings. Sure, there are movies that you could say have like sort of similar themes. Call Me by Your Name. You know, I can think of some ways in which Marriage Story is similar. This movie's still completely singular to me, like the way that it relates to art, the way that you can meta-interpret it.
You know, I think what you're describing, Cole, the word you're searching for is masterpiece.
Masterpiece. Yeah, sure. Like, you can just discuss so much. There's just so much here. But I think this movie will stand the test of time.
It just has a fucking knockout ending. Even if you're like hovering on a 9 throughout the movie, like the ending will just boost you up to a 10. I that's what I believe. Like, if the movie's sort of a 9 for you, the ending kind of boosts it to a 10.
Hope you enjoyed this analysis, and you know, you can give your own interpretations in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
My question is it possible to say this is a bad movie?